Morning again. This is the inaugural PIM HR Conference 2020, and we couldn't be more proud to be bringing this event to you. The year 2020, boy, it has really shown the importance of the HR role. Your role in keeping the fires out and the doors open really has never been more clear. We envisioned this conference well over a year ago. I don't think we knew what how important this conference was going to be to so many people. Of course, we didn't envision it to be virtual. We were hoping that we were all going to be together under one roof and really sharing back and forth. But the content is still going to be top notch, and we're going to have a couple panel sessions in the afternoon that I think are going to be really invigorating discussions. And we want you to be participating throughout the day. I'm going to just do a little bit of a housekeeping. And first I want to welcome not only the members of Printing Industry Midwest, but all those who are coming from down south with our partners at PIM Mid-America and Teresa Campbell. Welcome you and your group today. Oh, you're on mute, Teresa.
There we go. Thank you, Steve. We are so pleased to be partnering with PIM to offer our members HR education sessions to assist them in staying current on HR issues. And you were absolutely right when you said this year brought some challenges that we didn't foresee. And I'm really proud of our HR directors across the country who have really stepped up to assist our industry, printing companies, to serve not only our employees, but our industry as a whole. They have faced a slew of issues that we had not addressed before, and all of them have been so professional in bringing those needs to the surface and addressing those. So I'm excited to partner with PIM. Thank you for your support in this. The lineup of speakers offers great informational resources, and we hope that all of the attendees enjoy the program. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Teresa. Absolutely. I mean, it's just been overwhelming to watch the work that these HR executives have needed to do to keep their companies in the know about all of these fast changing rules, regulations, and dealing with such critical issues as keeping their employees alive. Really, I can't imagine the stress that many of them are under. So we're happy to have you here today. I want to let you know that you are muted automatically when you come in, as well as an attendee, your video is off. If you are a panelist and need to be recognized as such, chat in. Use your chat function here to talk with us about technical issues you might be having. But if you have a question today, you're going to be using the Q&A function. So you'll see that either on the top or the bottom of your screen, Q&A. Please just type in your question. We'll be able to address it perhaps in writing, or we'll bring it to the speaker, and then we can address it live. If there's any questions we don't get to, we will, of course, get back to you with the answers at a later date. We want to also suggest that you use the speaker view in your upper right-hand corner. If it says gallery view, then you're good. If it says speaker view, you need to click that. Everything's kind of backwards in Zoom land. Let me just go to the next screen. Of course, all the sessions today are going to be recorded individually, because not all of you are going to be able to be sitting tight all day long. You do have a business to run, we understand that. So we're going to be recording these sessions individually. We'll be posting them to our Connect site, which is password protected, but of course, as a registered attendee, you have access to them. So please reach out to Ben Daly in our office for any issues, or Chris Davis in accessing these presentations. We should have them available to you within the next couple of days. And then we'll be submitting to you either late today or tomorrow at some point a conference survey. So we want to make sure that you please fill that out, because that's going to be really important for us to make sure that these events meet your needs. So what we've got the lineup for you today is we've got some built-in breaks. So if you are going to be checking in and back and forth and you want to connect with the live event throughout the day, it's really kind of the most invigorating opportunity to stay connected, knowing you're live, knowing you can ask questions. We welcome that. And so we have at 8:45, we're going to be listening to Kit Welchlin, dealing with difficult people. Now, that's in everybody else's organization, not yours, but you might want to stick around anyway. Diversity, of course, is top of mind. We're going to be talking about the Diversity Coalition that PIM has launched. And we have a terrific opportunity to talk about those vital issues. And then, as we were just talking and alluding to, there's so much going on and so much you need to be on top of. We've got Peter Revenue, who's going to be connecting us to all that you need to know about labor law today. And then we've got two really terrific panels. We like to schedule the panels in the afternoon because after you've had lunch, it's a lot more exciting. You've got a lot of back and forth. We'll have back and forth conversation, and I think you'll get a tremendous amount. Certainly, we've got seasons HR veterans on our first panel, and as well as really our top HR executive. You all hear and are able to get the wisdom of Adrienne Harrison on a regular basis as she monitors our HR listserv. So I know you know Adrienne, so that's going to be a terrific panel. And then we've got a really exciting panel with a lot of experts about how to leverage the community partners that we have built relationships with, how to use them to fill your talent pipeline. So want to now kind of get underway with our keynote. Kit Welchlin is someone that we came across quite some time ago. Kit is a very interesting speaker and has a very interesting background. He's been speaking since he was 9 years old. And throughout his career, he's been recognized as someone who is just able to tell a story, but not just ability to bring people into him and tell a story effectively. He's also got manufacturing experience. He's run 3 different manufacturing companies. So not only can you listen to Kit from a standpoint of he's an excellent presenter and he knows how to present content, but he's walked the walk. And so he really has known how to deal with difficult people over his time. So I'm really excited to have him here and share that wisdom. And I'm going to stop my screen so Kit can share his. But Kit, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you, Steve. Thank you for that flattering introduction. My goodness, after an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. You mentioned that I began public speaking at the age of 9. That was not out of desire. That was out of necessity. You see, when I grew up on that hog and dairy farm in southern Minnesota, I was the youngest of 4 sons, no sisters. And I grew up in a position-centered family, not a person-centered family where everyone would have an equal say or an equal vote. No, there was a true hierarchy in the family where my dad had the most authority, then my mom, and then it went from oldest to youngest, and I was the youngest. So what would happen around the dining room table is my dad would say something, then my mom would say something, then Cabot, Kelly, Corey, and then they changed the subject. And I always had a terrible time getting into the conversation. But in 4-H, I could get up in front of a club once a month and give a 5 or 10-minute speech without interruption, and well, really haven't stopped since. So today we're going to be talking about dealing with difficult people. And according to a book called Nasty People, somewhere around 20% of the population is considered difficult. So we're going to be talking about why people become difficult. I'm going to share my top 10 list of the most common difficult people you'll run into, 5-step action plans and how you respond to each one of those. We'll also talk about some generational friction that can make it seem like people are being difficult. And then I have 50 strategies at the very end to deal with the truly ruthless, the 1% of the population that are impossible, that all you can do is save yourself. So if 20% of the population is considered difficult, pretty much no matter where you go, there's going to be one. And we want to make sure we're prepared so we can respond rather than react, so that we can take control of the conversation rather than be a victim of it. So I'm going to share with you some strategies that people will respect you rather than want to resent you. People will be attracted to you, and you'll become the leader that people would like to follow. But we do know this: when it comes to difficult people, they can really stink up an organization. And people who lack strong relationships have 2 to 3 times the risk of early death, regardless of whether they smoke, drink alcohol, or exercise regularly. Now, please don't misinterpret this statistic. That doesn't mean we can lay on the sofa, eating junk food, smoking cigarettes, drinking booze, and live a long, happy life as long as we get along with our staff. That would help. But difficult people can be somewhat corrosive on a supportive communication environment, and we want to make sure that we minimize the damage. So what are some of the words that come to mind when you think of difficult people? It's a wide range of words that people use to describe them. Sometimes they name names, but usually it's something about they're arrogant, they're conceited, they're mean-spirited, they're angry, and they may not even remember what they're angry about. Oh, they're stubborn, they're opinionated, they're perfectionists or chauvinists. There's all sorts of ists when it comes to handling difficult people or having to deal with them. And I really want you to think about what are the areas in your life that when people attack them, make you mad. Because difficult people try to find those things out. They kind of keep picking at the soft underbelly of our self-concept and self-esteem to see where they can take our breath away, put us on our heels, or make us angry or upset. So I really would like you to think about what are those areas that when people attack that, kind of throw you off a little bit. Now, through a speaking season, my weight will vary about 15 pounds. Sometimes I'll be 15 pounds up, sometimes 15 pounds down. But my wife's grandmother, God rest her soul, whether I was up 15 or down 15, every time she would give me a hug, she would say, "Oh, Kit, feels like you put on a little weight." Always wanted to grab around her skinny little leg, pop her head, but I didn't. I would just stiff arm her head into the family room, get on the sofa so she wouldn't insult me anymore. But guess what? Her 4 adult children, every time they got together, would talk about, what diet are you on? What exercise program are you on? And it always kind of threw them off because it was an issue that she thought was pretty important. If anybody ever questions my trustworthiness, about makes my head explode. So I know there's areas that when people attack that make me mad. And what I'd like you to think about with certain difficult people is that this is kind of the impact they have on an organization. Above a baby's crib, sometimes we'll hang a mobile and there'll be a bear on there and there'll be a lion on there and there'll be an alligator on there. And the baby's looking up at that mobile thinking, there's an alligator in my crib. I don't know if they really think that or not. But anyway, the baby reaches up and taps that bear. And what does the bear do? What does the lion do? What does the alligator do? And that's what difficult people do. They walk into the organization, they kick you in the shin, they whack this person on the side, they hadn't poked that person in the throat, and all of us are like this. And we need that to stop. Now, one of the ways I sometimes describe this is, let's say I was a difficult person, and every time I came to work, I carried a jackknife, and on my way in, I sliced the bark on the crab apple tree out by the front door. Then on my way home, I'd slice the bark on my way home. Next morning, I come to work, I slice the bark on that crab apple tree by the front door on my way into work and on the way out. And what's going to happen to that crab apple tree? Well, over time, it will literally kill the tree, literally cut it down. And that's what difficult people seem to do over time. They just keep picking at things and causing trouble, and it wears down the organization's morale and can have a negative impact on productivity. So we want that to stop. Now, we do have some options. Now, over the next 45 minutes or so, you can listen to this presentation and think, well, that was kind of interesting, but I don't think I'm going to put any of those strategies into practice. That's all right. If the status quo is working for you, that's okay. It doesn't look like anybody has a pounding headache or an upset stomach right now, so maybe what you're doing is fine. I would like you, though, to consider changing your attitude about difficult people. There must be something that we can appreciate about them. I remember back in the 80s, I had an employee named Willie, and I was sick of him, and I thought there must have been a good reason why I hired him. And I came back from lunch, and I sat in my office. I had the separation notice out. I was going to fire him, and I thought there must be something I can appreciate about him. It was 15 minutes before the second shift was going to arrive, and I sat back in my chair. And when I did, I recognized and saw the 2 shelves of bowling trophies that we had. I sponsored 2 bowling teams on Thursday nights. And I sat back and I thought, he's a good bowler. Took me 2 hours and 45 minutes to give him credit for being a good bowler. And I did not fire Willie that day. Then about 15 years later, I was back for a high school class reunion, walked into the Eagles Club, and there was Willie sitting at the bar, and I waved at Willie, and he turns and he says, "Hey, Welchlin, you SOB." And he didn't use the acronym, he used the words. And there are about 80 people in the Legion Glow like this. And I went over to Willie, I put my arms around him, I grabbed my fist in his shoulder. I said, "How you doing, Willie?" And he says, "I'm doing great, boss." I said, "Good for you. What are you up to these days?" And he says, "I'm still out at the shop." I said, "You're still out at the shop? That's great." I wanted to fire him in '86. Why? Because I didn't like him. I still don't like him, but it may not have been a good reason to fire him. So sometimes if we step back, we can appreciate them a little bit more. You might even notice they have some friends. Can't imagine how, but they do. I'd like you to change your behavior. I would like you to consider the 5-step action plans I'm going to share with you for each one of these difficult types of people. And then the other option, of course, is to leave, because this person probably isn't going to. Some difficult people have the standing threat. If you fire them, they'll sue everyone. I always tell my clients, hire me, I'll fire them. I've got a $4 million liability policy. Let's use it. Because, I always suggest too, that sometimes, you can hire 2 people half as skilled as that person and be money ahead because of the talent that you're losing because of their corrosive personality. So if they're not going to leave, that might be an option for you. But let's see if there's some other options. So what are the main reasons why people become difficult? Well, there's 4 intentions we have when we come to work: to get things done. And if we're going to do them, we could just, do them well, so get it done right. We spend so much time together, it should be nice to get along. And when we do good work, it's nice to get appreciation. But people become difficult when these intentions aren't fulfilled. So when people want to get it done and they fear it's not going to get done, they become more controlling, more demanding. They exaggerate their behavior. And then when people want to get it done right and they fear it's going to be done wrong, then they become more perfectionistic, pointing out potential flaws, potential errors. Are you sure you filled that form out correctly? You've done it 1,000 times. You'd like to, stab them in the thigh. Can't do that. So you say, yes, I believe I did. And then want to get along. And if they feel left out, then they'll exaggerate their behavior to become approval seeking with a lot of relational maintenance activities, and they don't get their work done. It becomes too much social activity. And then when people want to get appreciation and they're not getting any, well, they'll throw an adult temper tantrum, or they'll go silent for a few days, at least get some attention because they didn't get appreciation. And they turn into people over time that we really can't stand. So I believe what we can do is, I call it preventative medicine in a way in communication, recognize that these 4 intentions are important and make sure we craft our language to match the most important intention they have that day. So here we go. Here's our top 10 list. Let's take a look at the tank. Now, the tank is somebody that wants to get something done, and they think you're part of the reason for something not getting done. So your goal is to command respect, because tanks simply don't attack people they respect. So what you do is you hold your ground. You don't change what you said, how you said it, what you look like when you said it. You don't change your position. You interrupt their attack by saying their name over and over again, saying, "Corey, Corey, Corey, I want to get it done too." And you aim to the bottom line. Now, the way you recognize a tank is this is someone that says, doesn't anybody realize this has to be shipped out by Friday? Doesn't anybody know that the customer wants this today? And so whenever there's a pressure of time, then we recognize this is the tank, wants to get it done, maybe even willing to cut corners to get it done. So we want to make sure we interrupt their attack. "Corey, Corey, Corey, I want to get it done too." Then they know you've heard them. Then you aim for the bottom line by speaking in I language. This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm handling it. They'll interrupt you and you say, Corey, that's the second time you've interrupted me. I welcome your feedback when I'm through." And you always speak in I language. Take personal responsibility for what you're doing to handle the problem. If you say, "Some of us were talking," they'll say, "Who?" If you said, "Maybe we could do this," maybe. There's no such thing as maybe to a tank. You either do or you don't. Now, if you did blow it, if you did hold things up, let them know what you've learned and what you'll do to make sure it never happens again. And they'll respect you. They'll think everybody else is an idiot, but they'll respect you. So if you have tanks in your life, this might be the only section of this video you need to rewatch. And when I say Corey, 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 that's my brother, an orthopedic surgeon. Chance to cut's a chance to cure. Skin to skin, 45 minutes. I have a tea time at 1:30. He and I own some real estate together. I'll call him and I have about 3 to 5 minutes to get the conversation started and finished. And I say, "Corey, I will. Corey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I need from you. Corey, that's the 3rd time you interrupted me. Corey, that's the 4th time." Now, there's a great little book called Communicating Today by Dr. Raymond Zuchner. that claims it only takes 27 consecutive repetitions of a new behavior to form a new communication pattern. So you might be saying, Corey, that's the 27th time you've interrupted me. I welcome your feedback when I'm through. Because what usually happens is I go through this material, and if we were in person together, someone will say, I said that one time and it didn't work. Well, I would suggest you say it 26 more times and wear them down. I've had people do it before with a piece of paper, making the fence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and somewhere around 20, that person will shift. And then again, sometimes they won't. So let's take a look at the know-it-all. They also want to get it done. They know how to get it done. They've been getting it done for years. What we're going to try to do is open his or her mind to new ideas and new information. Different strategy than the tank. So with this person, what you need to do is know your stuff to ask good questions. And then you backtrack respectfully. Are you concerned we may run out of money? Are you concerned we may run out of time? What seems to be the greatest concern? And blend with their doubts and their desires. And then present your ideas indirectly. Perhaps we could do this, or maybe we could do this, or how about this? Or what would you think of this? Now, the toughest part of this one is step 5, and that is to turn them into your mentor. Oh man, that's hard to keep it down. You have to swallow a lot of pride. But this is how I do it. When I realize I'm dealing with someone that's a know-it-all, not to think they know it all, but they really do, I'll just kind of stop and look stunned and say, you know what? You seem to know more about this than anybody else I've worked with. Oh, they love that. And they love you because it's true. They do know more about it than anybody else. This is what they eat, breathe, sleep, drink is their career. So if we acknowledge that extreme expertise, we get them on our side. And then we can always use them as a resource. And you've been given the library card to access all that information and say, I'm thinking about bringing this up at the next meeting. What do you think I should mention? They'll walk away, they'll come back 15 minutes later with a 50-page document with little flags, information that you could share. They can do your research in minutes where it might take hours or days to find it. So if you have a know-it-all in your life, that's how you handle them. Let's take a look at the sniper. The sniper also wants to get it done, but it's kind of funny. They also want to get appreciation. So they believe they can get it done by embarrassing and humiliating you. They also believe it's their sense of humor, and how do people determine whether or not they like your sense of humor is if it matches their sense of humor. Otherwise you're sick. So this person may not have a sense of humor that we really appreciate. So when they insult you, one of the steps you can take is just stop, slowly turn to them and say, I'm sorry, what did you say? And ask them to repeat the insult. And usually they won't. Or you ask, what does that mean? Or what does that have to do with this? And it kind of draws out how ridiculous the comment was. If you've heard they've been spreading rumors about you, track them down and say, I've heard that you said this about me. Is it true? If there's a problem in our relationship, I'd love to talk with you one-on-one. I expect we'll get along. So always go on a grievance patrol if you hear that they're spreading rumors, and then suggest a civil future. But the key with a sniper, and I don't care whether they're trying to get something done or trying to get attention, is that you confront until they knock it off. Now, they'll still pick on other people, but they're not going to pick on you. And that's what we want. Now, you might notice something interesting about these 3 slides. You have the tank that wants to get it done. You have the know-it-all that wants to get it done. You have the sniper that wants to get it done. And sometimes when people are so driven to get things done, they might start out as a tank, trying to overwhelm you. And then if that doesn't work, they'll try to bury you with their knowledge. If that doesn't seem to work, then they might get kind of sarcastic and mean and be a sniper. Okay, smarty pants, what do you think we should do? So the intent, though, doesn't change, but their strategy does. That's when you might want to go back to your notes and say, now who am I dealing with and how do I respond to that person? Let's take a look at the think they know it all. They really don't. They read something some time ago about something like that. They're really starving for appreciation, but it's hard to appreciate their lack of depth and knowledge. So your goal is to give them a little bit of attention and move on. So ask what questions and how questions, who questions, when questions, where did you read that article? Who is the person that you're referring to, or what magazine did you find that in? And then if they don't have any answers, they just say, well, I read something some time ago about something like this. Then you need to say, well, I'm glad you brought that up. That reminds me of what we were talking about. That's called junkalogic. It comes from marketing. If you're watching TV, you know how you kind of lose your critical thinking skills. And there's a Hyundai commercial on, and it's driving along a Northern California coast, and everybody in the car is smiling, and they pull up to this great big estate, and people literally dance to the front door. And for some reason, the driveway's always wet. I haven't figured that out yet. And you think, oh, if I bought a Hyundai, I'd be happy. But what do we get when we buy a new car? car payments. The rest of it is junk. So when people say they read something some time ago about something like this, ask some questions to see if we can get some depth. If not, just say, I'm glad you brought that up. That reminds me of what we were talking about. The other thing that you can do is talk to them after the meeting or after the conversation and say, you know, the next time you think of something you read some time ago about something like that, track that down, bring it in. I'll make copies for everybody. We'll share it at the next meeting. So guide them on what behavior you can appreciate instead of them exaggerating their behavior to just get some attention. Let's take a look at the grenade. The grenade wants to get appreciation. They've been working very hard. They might be taking some of your phone calls, answering some of your emails today as you attend the HR conference. And then you might casually come in at the end of the day and say, so how'd it go while I was gone? Oh, how'd it go while you were gone? I was taking your phone calls. I was responding. And they just blow up. So what you need to do is calm down the situation, call their name over and go, Teresa, I know you're working hard. I wouldn't ask anybody else to cover for me other than you. And then you leave. That gives them a chance to wipe the spit off their chest, to pick up the things that they knocked over, the stars to go away in their eyes. And then you come back in a soft tone of voice and say, so how did it go while I was gone? And they'll say, well, there's a couple of people I didn't know how to respond to. Here's a note from that phone call. And here's a couple of emails I didn't know how to respond to. And you say, thank you so much for taking care of this while I was gone. I knew I could count on you. Now, if you know what it is that sets them off, don't go in every day and pull the pin. They'll blow up. Instead, spoon feed that appreciation right away. I'll give you an example. My oldest brother is a police officer. And when I give seminars, sometimes he'll call me and leave a message. Hey, call me. So I'll call him. And then I'll call him and he'll say, hey, I'm at work. But call me at work. I'm responsible for every minute, 10 hours a day. I think, I'm responsible for every minute, 10 hours a day too. So I realized something. He was a grenade. So this is what I do instead. Now when I call him back, I say this: how's the hardest working man in law enforcement? And this is the response I get. I don't know if I'm the hardest working man in law enforcement, but I'm crunching crime. But it's a lot better than, quit calling me at work. I'm responsible for every minute, 10 hours a day. So if you know what is the appreciation that grenade is starving for, make sure that's the first thing you say to them as you start the conversations. And then they won't exaggerate their behavior and blow up. Let's take a look at the yes person. Now, a yes person wants to get along with everybody. The latest request becomes their highest priority. So they have a hard time getting everything done because they don't want to let anybody down, even though they're letting everybody down. So we want to get some commitments from them that we can count on. So I'd like you to sit down and talk to them like friends. Now, you'd like to wring their neck, but I'd like you to sit down and talk to them like friends. Ask what questions and how questions, no wrong answers, clarify the situation, acknowledge their good intent, and then use the past as a case study and say something like this: if we could go back in time, how could we make sure we don't miss our deadline? Now, if we go back in time, how could we go back without our deadline? So our sounds like a relationship. And then you say, and they won't tell you, because if you don't like the idea, they think you don't like them. So you might say, how about if I email you a week before the deadline? Would that help? Yep, write that down. I'll do that. Okay, you'll email me the week before. How about if I call you 2 days before? Would that help? Yeah, that would help. Okay, I'll call you 2 days before. And how about that morning when I come to work, I'll just stop by and say, hey, how we doing on that project? Are we good at noon? And would that help? Yep. So I will email you, I will call you, and I'll stop by that day. And you will get this done for me by noon that day. Yep. Okay, you know what? Noon. Let's say instead, it takes me about 7 minutes to get in that office and get set up. So I need that 11:53. 11:53. Yep. But guess what? You'll come back and 11:53, and it won't be done. It won't be done. Remember, it takes 27 consecutive repetitions of a new behavior to form a new communication pattern. So you might have to say, that's not like you. You tend to get your work done for me. And then also let them know how it had a negative impact, not only on you, but everybody else that attended that meeting. How we weren't able to make a decision, how we didn't have the most accurate information, and we had to delay our discussions. So you want to make sure you kind of have a certain amount of peer pressure on it. Now, when they do follow through and they do get it done, say to them, that's just like you. And it will be true. Your work will be getting done by them. Nobody else's will be, but yours will be. And that's what we want. So that's how you handle a yes person. Yeah, you might run into a maybe person. Now, when it comes to a maybe person, now this is somebody that has a hard time making a decision. They want to get along with everybody, and they look at the downside of every decision. They don't want to pester anybody. They don't want to anger anybody. They don't want to disappoint anybody. What we need to do is help them think decisively. So what you want to do is establish a comfort zone, just like a yes person, because getting along is important. Explore options and obstacles, what seems to be holding them back, any challenges. and provide a simple decision-making system. It might be a T-graph, positive benefits, negative consequences. It might be a 4 or 5-step decision-making model, but reassure and ensure follow through by asking them to set some deadlines and check-in points that you can follow up to make sure everything's on track, and then suggest a better future for the two of you because of their honesty with you. If you've ever taken one of those conflict resolution assessments where it talks about whether you're an owl, a fox, teddy bear, turtle, or a shark, this person would be an owl. They want to find out what everybody thinks and how everybody feels, but you're never quite sure what they're thinking or how they're feeling. So you want to make sure that you give them a decision-making model and let them know that their decisiveness is actually going to improve the relationship. It's the indecisiveness that's causing some tension. That's how you work with a maybe person. You know, when I was young and I didn't have so much arthritis and scar tissue, I used to be a tank. I love getting things done. But the more I've read over the years, the more I realize I didn't know. And now I become a little bit more of a maybe person. And so I have a decision-making model that I use routinely to make decisions and to move forward and live with the consequences, positive or negative. Now let's take a look at the nothing person. This is an interesting personality. They're in a double bind. They want to get it right and they want to get along. So it's difficult to get feedback from them. They might come up to you and say, this has been happening every once in a while, blah, blah, blah. And you say, how often does that happen? And you're just going to get a shrug. Then you wait 45 seconds to see if they actually answer. This is called wait time. It's a lot of pressure on the relationship, and they may not answer. So then you have to go to the absurd, the ridiculous, exaggerated extremes, and you say, does it happen every 5 minutes or so? No, it doesn't happen that often. Once a year or so? No, more often than that. So as long as it isn't every 5 minutes or once a year or so, anything in between should be reasonable. You're not done yet. So then you say, so does it happen every day? And they're thinking if it happened today or was that yesterday? And they say, oh, not that often. Once every couple of months or so? Well, was it this month or was it last month? No more often than that. So once a week or so? No, they're wondering about that this week or was that last week? And they'll, no, not that often. So once a month or so? And they're thinking now there's 28 days in February, there's 31 days in March, but if you have a 5-day work week, that'd be 20. That's how bound up tight they are. So sometimes what we have to do is lighten it up, guess the reason for them not to share that information. Are you worried that it won't be accurate? Are you worried someone may not like, or I may not, like the information and it might damage our relationship? Just get it out in the open. And sometimes you have to level with them and say, I really need to know. Otherwise, we're not going to get this done right. And we might not get along. Oh, that's exactly what they want. That would be like taking a smartphone away from a teenager. It's like, it's how they breathe. And this is what the nothing person wants, to get it right and get along. Now let's take a look at the no person. This is somebody who wants to get something done right. And they believe they can do that by making sure nothing goes wrong. So they're very good at fault finding. They're very, it might be a critical thinker. And we're so glad to have a critical thinker on our team. And then after a couple of months, we start thinking, wow, this person's really critical. So what we're going to try to do is move them from fault finding to problem solving. So what you do is go with the flow. Let them be as negative as they'd like to be. This is the type of person, if you give them the book, The Power of Positive Thinking, they'll take a look at that book, throw it off to the side and say, what good would that do? So what you're going to do is go with the flow, use them as an early warning system. Say, I'm thinking about bringing this up at the meeting next Tuesday. What do you think could go wrong? And have pen and paper ready, because they'll tell you. They're not going to like it. They're going to hate it. They're not going to support it. This is a problem too. Customer's not going to go for that and you write down everything that they tell you that could go wrong. They'll come back in the next morning and say, I couldn't hardly sleep last night. Here's another problem with your idea. And they'll tell you everything that's wrong with your idea. And you have several days now to prepare for Tuesday's meeting. So when you get to Tuesday's meeting, you say, this is something I think we should do. And they'll snap their head over and look at you like you're crazy. And I know this will be a problem. And you recite the problem that they said the previous week with your idea. And you get a no person to nod their head yes with you. And I think we could overcome that by doing this. And they'll be like that, like a dog with a new chew toy. And I know this could be a problem. And you recite another problem they told you about your idea, and they'll nod their head yes with you. And I think we could overcome that by doing this. And they'll be like, and you may preempt every one of their concerns, and they'll cut in and say, I don't care what you say, it's not going to work. And then you just go with the polarity response. Maybe you're right. Maybe it won't work. And then you go silent. And you examine air particles in the room. You look at the carpeting and wonder when was the last time we vacuumed that. You read what's on your pen, that promotional material, and you wait about 45 seconds. So they're looking at you going silent. They're looking at everybody else in the room. They're looking at you going silent. They might say, well, we could try it in this one department, see if it works. But then again, they might not. But the key is this: acknowledge your good intent on the way out the door and say to them, you know, one of the things I love about working with you, yep, I use the L word. One of those things I love about working with you is your attention to detail, your high standards. We always make better decisions when you're involved. And you figure out about a half a dozen different ways you can compliment them on their critical thinking skills. And what's interesting is then after about the next 6 to 10 meetings, you'll say something and everybody rolls their eyes. And this no person will chime in and say, hey, let's hear what she has to say. And they'll support your conversation. They may not agree with what you're asking or what you're suggesting, but they'll support you to have that conversation. So you can get them on your side. Now we have the whiner. Of course, this is somebody who wants to get it done, but they kind of get bogged down with worry and woe. So we're going to form a problem-solving alliance with them. So when they come in and start whining, you kind of stop, break eye contact, you get a piece of paper, you say, okay, what seems to be going on? And you write it down, and then you ask this question, how often does that happen? And they'll say, I don't know. Say, would you do me a favor? Would you take 2 weeks and keep a log? Let me know how often it happens. Don't tell anybody because we don't want to contaminate the study. Let's get together again. And that would be let's get together again on October 1st. They say, I will, and off they go. You have 2 weeks off. And so does everybody else. They're over there writing things down. They come back and you say, well, what'd you find out? Well, it hasn't happened again. Whoo, good, problem solved itself. Or they may come back and they say it's happened 8 times. 8 times, that's a problem. I know. So what do you want? Huh? What do you want to do? I don't know. Well, would you do me a favor? Would you take 2 weeks and come up with, a half a dozen ideas of how to solve that problem? Let's get together again. Let's get together on the 15th. Now, they're not quite as excited when they leave this time because you just push them into problem solving rather than finger pointing. And they might come back and say, I couldn't come up with any solutions to the problem. So then you would say, so since your complaint seems to have no solutions, talking about them really isn't doing anything for either of us. If you happen to change your mind or come up with some ideas, please let me know. Or they may come back with some ideas and you talk through those. And you say, that second idea, that third idea, they're pretty good. And then you go to somebody else in the organization that may have more positional power than you and say, this person has some ideas of how to solve a problem they recognize. I thought you two should talk. And you leave. So you delegate them to somebody else that can actually do something about it. Might be a department head, it might be the CEO, it might be the CFO, COO, anybody that may have more positional power or influence in that department where the problem is occurring, introduce them and get out of the way. Now they may come back in a couple of weeks, start complaining to you, get out the piece of paper, say, oh, wait a minute, what's going on? How often does that happen? Would you take 2 weeks and keep a log? They'll go whine to somebody else. Yes, and that's what we want. That's what we want. So those are the top 10 most difficult people we'll run into in the 5-step action plans. So I believe in this. If we know what sets them off, we want to make sure we say something in the conversation, in our emails, in our phone calls, that they know we're going to get it done, we're going to get it done right, we got along, and we appreciate them. I'd like us to make sure we hit all 4 of these bases in the conversation. So today it would be as simple as at the very end of my presentation, I say to Steve and Chris, we started on time and ended on time, so we got it done. I thought it went pretty well, so we got it done right. I sure enjoyed working with you. We got along. And thank you again for inviting me to speak at the HR conference. Now, how long does it take to say those 4 things? 6 seconds. 6 seconds. If you had 50 phone calls in a day or 50 conversations in a day, it'd only take 5 minutes out of your day to sprinkle a magic pixie dust. We're going to get it done. We're going to get it done right. We get along, and I appreciate you. Now, if we were working together in a seminar, I would have you script 5 different ways you could say we're going to get it done. 5 different ways we could tell them it's going to be done right. 5 different ways that we get along. 5 different ways we appreciate them. So you're going to get it done. It's at the top of my list. That'll be my #1 priority. Consider it done. Got it. Anything like that. You're going to get it done right. It'd be words like verify, double check, review. Let's go through this one more time. Let's double check the details. Any of that language implies it's not only going to get done, it's going to get done right. And then get along, have a nice weekend, have a great day. Always great talking with you. And then appreciation. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for bringing that to my attention. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you. I really appreciate that you chose to work with our company rather than another, any of that language. But make sure that in your email, in the phone call, in the conversation, you mention something related to each 4 of these. Then people won't exaggerate their behavior. We won't be dealing with people that are controlling, perfectionistic, approval seeking, or attention getting. That's exhausting. This is kind of fun. That's horrible. The day flies by. That's just a suggestion. But that's like what I'd like you to do. Now, one of the things that sneaks in there that may cause friction in our relationships is the generational stuff, generational communication. And sometimes we might have up to 5 generations showing up at the workplace on the same day. It might be a founder, owner that's a veteran or traditional. My mom and dad are in their 80s and 90s. They're still farming. My mom's in her late 80s. My dad's in his early 90s. Still involved in agriculture. Baby boomers, that's my 3 older brothers. I'm a 61 baby. I'm between a baby boomer and a Generation Xer. And so I've kind of selected the ones that I like out of both generations. My wife is just a couple of years younger than me, and she's a Generation Xer to the bone. So when we go through the information on these generations, I would say about 70% of that information will be accurate for the generation. Then millennials, it used to be 1980s and 2000 was their birthday, but then they backed it up to 1995 because of technological advances. And now we've come up with Gen Z. And Gen Z are about 24-year-olds or so or younger, just coming out of college and shortly after high school. So what's the big deal? Well, traditionals complain about how the younger generations expect to be given so much so quickly without paying their dues. And then the boomers complain about how they've given years to the organization only to be passed over, laid off in favor of younger employees who are more knowledgeable about technology and may do the job for less money. And then Generation Xers complain about how tired they are of being treated as lazy slackers. And that's why the other generations don't like them. Now, lazy slackers, that's not the case. They just want balance in their life. Generation Xers aren't lazy slackers. They give 100% at work, 12% on Monday, 23% on Tuesday, 40% on Wednesday. My wife's a Generation Xer, so that's kind of fun. Anyway, millennials complain about being put in the same category as Generation Xers when they want to be judged on their own merits. And then Generation Xers resent the traditionals for being resistant to change or unwilling to hand over the reins of authority. And then boomers resent the Gen Xers for finding it so easy to change jobs whenever they feel like it and demanding balance in their lives when a baby boomer would never ask for such a thing. And then traditionals resent the millennials for their entitlement mentality when traditionals had to work for everything they've gotten. And then millennials resent the boomers, who are probably their parents, for leaving the planet a mess when they were the ones that were supposed to clean it up. Now, I need to interject here. You know, the EPA was actually established by President Nixon in 1970. Air pollution is down by 70%. America's polluted waterways have been cut almost in half, from 2/3 in 1970 to about 1/3 today. And the hole in the ozone layer is healing. About 2060 or so, it should be completely healed. You know, when I was in manufacturing, I spent several hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure that we were following the guidelines, rules, regulations, that when it came to air and water pollution. So anyway, I just want to get that cleared up. Anyway, a culture that's been shaped by the different values and different standards and policies, of course, aren't necessarily going to approach work the same way, and they may not be compatible interacting with each other day in, day out. And then with the technological revolution, it's exacerbated the situation, and now we have some culture clashes among the generations that can affect turnover, which is expensive. So do we really have anything in common with the generations? Well, let's take a look at this. A 100-year-old man graduated from high school and is going to college. I don't know if you read about that. You might be wondering, what does he have in common with his college classmates? Well, not exactly the same chance of paying off his student loans. That's what's going to happen there. So we do have a foundation to work from. But when it comes to the generations, they do have a different attitude towards authority. The traditionals, chain of command, boss said so. Baby boomers, change of command, women's liberation movement, civil rights movement. The 60s, the Generation Xers, self-command, they came home alone, they don't mind being alone. Millennials, Gen Z, don't command, collaborate. They'd rather have an environment to do that. According to Gallup, 88% of millennials and Gen Zers would rather work in a collaborative culture than a competitive one. And then when it comes to career goals, the traditionals wanted to build a legacy, something that would last long after they were gone. Boomers wanted to get their, have a stellar career, to be the star, the number one salesperson, or to grow the organization. And sometimes, you see them receive plaques and trophies. They love that. Generation Xers build a portable career. This is a generation that grew up when IBM and AT&T started laying people off 2,000 or 3,000 at a time. So they're willing to change and go to a different career before they're asked to. And if they feel like they're getting behind in technology, they're going to bolt. And then millennials and Gen Z build parallel careers. They might want to work in the office in the morning and the shop in the afternoon. If there's a bike-a-thon, jump-a-thon in town, they want to be down there on the weekend. So we have to have a certain amount of flexibility. Work is just something else they do. It's just another activity for many of them. So traditional, satisfaction of a job well done, pat themselves on the back. Baby boomers like the money, the title, the recognition. If there was a corner office, they'd love to get in there. Gen Xers, freedom is the ultimate reward, that balance in their life. They don't want to wait till they're 65. And the millennials and Gen Z, work has to have meaning for me. And take a look at this. According to Great Place to Work's research, millennials and Gen Zers who found special meaning in their work were 6 times more likely planning to stay at their workplaces. So we got to sell the meaning, the value, what we're doing for other companies, for their families, for the community overall. When it comes to balance, traditional support me in my shifting balance. They're usually retiring from something, not to something. Boomers help me balance everyone else. They have, aging parents. They have adult children. They feel pretty stretched. Gen Xers give me balance now, not when I'm 65. And then millennials and Gen Z, work isn't everything. I need some flexibility. So we want to consider that. Take a look at this. A study by Millennial Branding said 45% of millennials and Gen Z will choose workplace flexibility over pay. So we might want to consider that in our HR menu. Traditionals, when it comes to changing jobs, it carried a stigma. I remember taking a class on interviewing in 1980, 83 or so, and it said you shouldn't change jobs more often than 8 to 10 years, otherwise you'd look like a job hopper. About 15 years later, I taught that course at Mankato State University, and the updated textbook said you shouldn't change jobs, more often than every 5 to 7 years, otherwise you'd look like a job hopper. Take a look at the bottom of this slide. For millennials and Gen Z, changing jobs is part of my daily routine. Well, that gives an opportunity for some lively conversation. So according to Forbes, 91% of millennials and Gen Z expect to stay in a job less than 3 years. So we're going to have to work harder to retain them. And in a study by Recruitify, found that while 83% of employed millennials and Gen Zers understood that job hopping can look bad on a resume, 86% said it would not stop them from changing jobs. And then according to Gallup, 60% of millennials and Gen Z are open to a new job opportunity right now. So we really have to be actively involved in the relationships with the youngest 2 generations. Now, when it comes to feedback, that oldest generation, no news is good news. Baby boomers feedback once a year, that annual performance appraisal. Gen Xers, sorry, how am I doing? They'll have a frank, direct conversation about it. Millennials, they want it through technology, a push of a button. They want it digitally portable. They want to access it with their smartphone. When it comes to training, the oldest generation learned it the hard way, on the job training. Baby boomers, they always had a concern if you train them too much, they'll leave and start a competing company. Gen Xers, the more they learn, the longer they'll stay. As long as they feel like they're at the cutting edge of technology, the software and hardware, they'll stick around. Millennials and Gen Z, continuous learning is a way of life. So we want to make sure we have snack size training materials they can access 24 hours a day, 7 days a week around their flexible schedules. And when it comes to personal professional outlook, the traditionals always hope for the reward of a pension. Baby boomers are trying to retool so they stay valued as a resource. Gen Xers, they want to renew, always want to be at the cutting edge of technology and not fall behind. And the millennials and Gen Z recycle, repurpose. They always want to make sure that we have a more sustainable product that we put out. So let's take a look at the 1% of the population that is ruthless. Let's talk about that. Because, it might be, we can recognize those 4 intentions. It might be just a generational issue, but sometimes it's really that this person's personality is just difficult. We have people that are strategically difficult. They know what they're doing. They can get a refund. They can get their money back. They can throw a fit. They do it on purpose. Some people, though, it's just their personality. They're difficult. But it's about 1% of the population that is, ruthless, impossible people. So here's some strategies I want to share with you. One is to move closer to them. You change the distance, it changes the dynamic. So instead of sitting at the opposite end of the table, every time you get together in a meeting, just move over 1 seat if you have that flexibility. Or in conversation, just step a half a step closer to them and talking to them, and they'll back up a half a step. They have this personal bubble. And in karate, the person that is, moving forward has 60% of the energy in the relationship. The person that's withdrawing only has 40%. So you just take a half a step closer to them, half a step closer to them, and that makes you different than everybody else. When the difficult person walks into a room, usually people are crouching behind their computers or diving behind their desks or leaving the room, but you move closer to them. That makes you different. They're intrigued by that rather than wanting to insult you. Repeat to yourself, this is a game. Not out loud, just in here. And the game is intimidation, the game is control, and you can decide to play or not since it's a game. So picture them in your mind as a metaphor. Now, the metaphor I use is a kangaroo. You know, I work with about 20,000 people a year, 1% of the population ruthless. So I get about 200 of these folks a year that come up from the back of the room. I look at them like a kangaroo. They're coming up, tell me what a waste of time that was. Can't believe we paid you for that. Can't believe your wife is still married to you. And then I just am thinking, oh, here comes a kangaroo. They're going to insult me. And then they hop away, you know, and attack somebody else. Sometimes I get the giggles and they say, what are you laughing about? I said, no one's ever called me that before, you know. So I try to just pull out those enemy arrows, you know, as they're lodging them. If you can't and don't feel comfortable laughing with them, or getting the giggles, when they can't see you, can't hear you, fake a big old belly laugh. According to Dr. Dale Anderson, you can fake a laugh, you get the same benefit as an authentic laugh. It releases endorphins. It also breaks the episode from being with that horrible, difficult person from the other relationships that are innocent. So you don't drag that negative emotion into those positive relationships. So don't take it seriously, laugh when you get a chance. Say something that doesn't mean anything. Sometimes I'll say turtle plop or cowabunga, or I'll go, huh, ee, ah. Sometimes on the phone, I'll just go through the vowels, ah, hey, ee, oh, ooh. They don't even notice because they're just giving me the business. So have some neutral phrases and how you respond to that. Don't say anything at all. They'll run out of ways to insult you. They'll say, are you still there? Sure, I'm listening. I'm jotting down notes. Repeat, that's an idea. That's interesting. You've got a point. Now, what does that mean when you say that's an idea? Nothing. They had an idea. That's interesting, isn't it? You would never say something like that. You've got a point and you're thinking, yeah, on the top of their head. But those are neutral phrases. You're not giving them any material to work with. Say, I'll need some time to think about that. Or you've given me a lot to think about. It's always a good phrase. Because what they're trying to do is push you off into an area you're not prepared to talk about. So you need to have a way to brush that off and delay a response. Otherwise, if you don't answer it accurately, they'll tell you how incompetent you are and how you're not as skilled as you think you are. So just say, I'll need some time to think about that. Is it possible we could get together tomorrow, like at 10, and discuss it? So always buy yourself a little bit of time. Cover your agenda. Whenever you deal with ruthless, difficult people, I want you to write down what you're going to talk about. And then when they try to push you off an area, you say, you know, these are the 3 things I wanted to talk about. That's something we'll talk about at another time. But let's talk about these 3 things. So always cover your agenda and nothing else. Redefine winning. You're not going to build a long-lasting, loving relationship with this person anyway. So redefining winning is you moved a little bit closer as you're having the conversation. You repeat it to yourself, this is a game, or you picture them in your mind like a character in a play or in a movie, and you didn't take it personally. And actually, you're able to brush it off by having a little laugh after the conversation. And so you want to make sure that you apply the techniques. That's how you redefine winning. And redefining winning is that you don't bring it up to anybody else. You just handle it because they may still have a positive relationship. So you don't want to contaminate or taint that relationship by complaining, openly moralizing about that person. Make being a good listener a priority. This might be the most important 5 minutes of your day. So be ready with pen and paper to jot down notes. Exhibit effective listening skills. Get into the stable nonverbal posture where you squarely face the other, not square off, but turn your upper body toward them. Tip your head when you're following along. Nod your head only when you agree. Have attentive facial expressions so they can see when they say something that has some impact. Remove the barriers between you and the other person. Maybe it's going out in the shop and talking about it. Maybe it's going to the conference room to have the discussion. Maybe this is something we should talk about over lunch. Maybe this is something we should never talk about over lunch, but consider the barriers and remove them. Lean forward slightly, show your enthusiasm as a listener. They say something you disagree with, you can lean back. Distance signals disagreement. They say something you agree with, you can lean forward a little bit more. That shows, and so you want to make sure that you also demonstrate eye contact, but normal eye contact, 1.8 to 2.6 seconds, according to Dr. Bert Decker. If you make eye contact longer than that, they might accuse you of being an extraterrestrial. Now, it's about the length of one sentence in conversation. So a person says something, we can blink, we can look at the paper, we can look over the shoulder, but you want to make sure your eye contact is natural, normal, 1.8 to 2.6 seconds, about the length of one sentence in conversation. Focus your attention. This is important information. This is a person that can have a tremendous negative impact on your staff. So you want to make sure that you really focus on getting through this conversation as effectively as possible. Visualize this person as someone that may need your help, maybe to get something done or to get it done right, get along, get appreciation. See if you can explore those 4 intentions somewhere buried under their hostility. Keep an open mind. They might tell you something you need to hear that other people didn't have the courage to tell you. They might say to you, my God, your breath, what did you eat? You should, you should cook it next time. Go to somebody you know and trust and say, somebody told me I have bad breath. Do I have bad breath? And a good friend will say, who said that? And you say, it doesn't make any difference. But somebody said, I have bad breath. Do I have bad breath sometimes? And a good friend will go, yeah, sometimes you do. And you say, hey, what if I do? Can you like throw me some breath mints or, signal me somehow, So we want to make sure that we keep in mind, this might be, some information we need that nobody else had the courage to tell us. Again, though, it might be a flat out lie. Keep this in mind. Lying is not a problem for these people. So you want to double check with somebody you know and trust if it's true or not. So keep an open mind. They might tell you something you need to hear. Don't interrupt. Let them go on and on and on. And they'll get tired of listening to themselves. Listen to the content, not necessarily how it's delivered. This is the type of person that likes to throw in a certain amount of locker room language just to see how you react. And you might have to level with them and say, I feel a little bit uncomfortable when you cuss and swear because that could have a negative impact on our relationship, or it makes it more difficult for me to keep track of what we're trying to accomplish. But, sometimes you might have to put them on notice that, that cussing and swearing has to stop. Listening noises like I see, I understand, go on, especially on the phone. What does it mean when you say I see? I have eyes, I can see. I understand, doesn't mean you agree. Go on. Hey, I'll tell you what, everybody else wishes they'd shut up. So when you say go on, they'll go, what? Go on. And they kind of run out of things to say because they like a verbal fist fight and you're not engaging. You just say, go on. Well, it takes the fun out of it for them. Take notes. It slows down the rate and speed in which they insult you. It also limits exaggerations. It gives you a record that you can compare to see if they're making it up or not. And then you can also provide feedback and verify it. You've told me this, this, and this. Is that right? I'm going to check that off then that I verified that. I will do it in person. I will do it on the phone, but I want to let them know I have a written record. And that may go in their personnel file, but it certainly is something I'm going to keep and use if this issue comes up again. Don't interrupt, let them vent. Sometimes they have to get it off their chest, throw a great big fit like a grenade, and then you just use their name and invite them back into the conversation. You say, Karen, I understand this is something that has caused you to be frustrated and angry about the situation. And they'll say, I am angry about it. Then they feel normal. And this is how we're going to move forward. I think the most powerful soft skill is empathy. And that is you blend with the emotion so that person feels normal. Then you can redirect with logic, because logic may not change that emotion for them. And you can't deny them the emotion. You shouldn't feel that way. They do feel that way. Feelings are a fact. They're a physiological impact on the body. So you have to blend with the emotion. I can understand how disappointed you are. I can understand how frustrating this is. And then they'll nod their head, and then you shift. You don't lay on empathy too long, and you move them in the direction that you'd like them to go. Ask what or how questions, because there are no wrong answers to what or how questions. You ask a who question, is one right answer. Where question, right answer. When question, one right answer. Why question, one right answer. And why questions imply a judgment or evaluation. You'll be wrestling on the floor then. With what questions, you get definitions, you get explanations. With how questions, you get examples and descriptions. Often when I deal with ruthless, difficult people, I'll go 3 rounds. What, how, what, how, what, how. Sometimes the last 2 or 3 questions don't even make any sense, but they're even more powerful because then the person stops and they kind of sigh and they go, I must not be explaining this very well. And then they focus on trying to help me understand rather than on them being right. So I always go 3 rounds. What, how, what, how, what, how. And then be positive. Remember the benefits. Health insurance, dental insurance, 401k plan. Now the benefits, your reputation, the mutual respect, holding each other in high regard. You're getting the, other employees appreciating your communication skills, and they'll tend to send you the people that become difficult, but that's all good news. Here's another technique. Ask, what do you mean or how do you mean to difficult people? Because we have no idea what they mean. Most people try to figure out how to make relationships better. They try to figure out how to get you before you get them. I mean, it's a completely different orientation to relationship. So what do you mean or how do you mean, and see what kind of answers you get. Also confirm your agreements in your own words. These ruthless, difficult people are experts at what are called relative words, some, many. If you say something to them like, I think we should order these, and they say, I'll go order some. How many is that? Well, it doesn't matter how many you order. It'll be the wrong number. Why'd you order so few? Why'd you order so many? So what you want to do is confirm your agreements in your own words, because this is the type of person who would give you a birthday card that says this. If you can guess the number printed inside this birthday card, you'll win $100. I'll give you a hint. It's between 3 and 5. Now, a normal person, of course, would answer 4. No, it's 4.3587623. You're so close. You can't win on that. So you always want to confirm your agreements in your own words, because you know what your words mean. Now these phrases, 28, 29, and 30 are called cooperation techniques. So you say, I will rather than I'll try, because I'll try is kind of a lie. You either do or you don't. So I will call you at 10 o'clock. I will stop by at 3 o'clock. Sounds like a commitment. When you use you can statements, you're focusing on what you can do, not what you can't do. They stop by and they say, I need 5 of these. You only have 2. Don't say, I only have 2. I don't have 5. They'll say, well, can't you keep an inventory? Instead, you say, you can have these 2. I will order 3 more. You can stop by tomorrow morning at 10 and pick those up. You can also use will you to gain cooperation rather than can you. Can you is a question of competence. Will you is a question of cooperativeness. Will you do me a favor? Sure. Ooh, what is it? But if you ask, can you do me a favor? People stop, what is it? Because there's a question of competence in can you. So will you stop by tomorrow morning and pick that up? Now you can use these 3 in a combination. You can say, you can take these 2. I will order 3 more. Will you stop by tomorrow after lunch and pick up the other 3? So you can use it in a combination. They're wonderful little techniques that really kind of smooth through the conversation. Set realistic goals. Okay. Realistic goals is some of these strategies will work for you. Some of them won't, because your temperament, your personality also comes into play. You also have this history. But out of these 50, there has to be at least a handful of these that you put into practice, see if they work. If that doesn't work, throw it out, grab another one. But realistically, not all of these. I have used all of these and they do work, but depending on your personality, depending on your communication style, you're gonna have to pick and choose through these. I'd also like you to think about it from the difficult person's point of view. Can you imagine being the person that has been identified as a difficult person? They walk into the break room and the conversations stop. They hear you making plans to do things on the weekends. They're never invited. Pretty lonely being the difficult person. So you might want to strike up conversations or initiate conversations with them casually so it doesn't seem strategic. I also like you to quantify the lifetime value of the difficult person, like I did with Willie. He's a good bowler and we had lots of bowling trophies. But it might be you might have to get so creative as to look up their property taxes and think about, well, at least $4,000 of property taxes go to the school district. You might find that they volunteer, and you might find out it's 1 hour a week that they give away their time. Well, that's 50 hours a year. That's a full work week that they volunteer. I can appreciate that. So you got to find something that you appreciate about them. Now, anybody else that deals with them, I want you to give them the scripts, give them the lines, give them the authority to handle the problems right away. I often find this in customer service where someone on the front lines deals with a ruthless, difficult person and then says, you'll have to, kind of talk to your supervisor or manager, and then they, turn it over to the supervisor or manager and they cut the deal. And usually there's a limit of dollars or free shipping or some replacement cost or whatever it might be. But it sure would be nice if we had people on the front lines that were given that same authority so they can handle it right away, so we don't waste time having the conversations twice or cause more negativity in the workplace. So give people some of that empowerment so they can handle it too. Ask yourself this question: is this something a friend would charge for? Let's say that there's a ruthless, difficult person that is coming into our office, and I look to you and I say, here comes that difficult person. I'll tell you what, pay them a compliment, shake hands, and then say, I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'll give you $20. And you go, you're on. So you see that person, you smile, you say, my goodness, have you been working out or something? You look great. You shake hands. Yeah, you know what? And I look forward to seeing you again soon. And then that person leaves, hey, $20. We wouldn't charge a friend for that. Why do we hold difficult people ransom for that? You want to make sure this isn't something you would charge a friend for. Being polite, being kind, to interact, to be engaged, to be positive. Now, you want to make sure you're not holding difficult people to an unfair standard. Always apologize and fix the problem while the difficult person is still there. If you do it the first time, there's 95% retention in customer service, 65% retention if it's the second time. Besides this, there's probably nobody else is going to do business with them anyway, so you can just well take care of it right away. Explain how you do things and how it benefits them to make sure that we get the right quantity. This is the information I need to make sure you get the right number of hours for PTO. This is what I require to make sure that the numbers all add up and you get the vacation time that you're supposed to. This is what I need. So always give the reason for the request and explain how you do things and how it's to their benefit. Measure performance. Some of these strategies will work, some won't. But what I'd like you to do is measure performance this way instead. Disregard everything I've said for the last 45 minutes, and then just keep track over the next 2 weeks of how many times this person gets under your skin, makes you frustrated, or you bring up the to people that don't even know them in conversation. Oh, you aren't gonna believe it. And then I'd like you to start practicing these strategies and see how few times this person gets under your skin, how few times you bring up in conversations with people that don't even know them. Because I might bump into you a year from now and say, how's that handling difficult people stuff going? You say, oh, it's about the same. Really? You used to get 3 headaches a week. Now you only get 1 headache a week. That's 100 headaches you haven't had in a year. That's a huge shift. So I want you to measure performance that way. I also like you to differentiate yourself from others. Best book I ever read was a book called Reaching Out by Dr. David W. Johnson. He talked about these 6 criteria of personal credibility. You just want to make sure you're consistently warm and friendly, even with the difficult people. Express your intentions and motives, short-term plans, long-term goals, removes the suspicion. Follow through with what you said you're going to do. Be an information source, and in certain areas, develop relevant expertise that you know more about that than anybody else. And when they have a question about that, they seek you out for the answers. And project dynamism, natural enthusiasm, actually appears you enjoy your job. You don't give difficult people much material to work with if you live up to those 6 criteria of personal credibility. So you want to make sure you differentiate yourself from others by living up to those 6 criteria. Understand your emotions so you can respond appropriately. All information simply comes through our senses. It's raw data. No meaning's been applied to it. The second step is interpretation. That's the intellectual question. Why did a person say this? Why did a person do this? Based upon that interpretation, we have a feeling. It gives you us a menu of options. Our job as professionals is to express our best option. Remember that old idea about collecting your thoughts? You think at 800 to 1200 words per minute. It only takes a few seconds for you to capture those better comments. I don't know if you're like me, but I spend most of my time biting my tongue. So give the reason to save time. It should always be the mission statement, the value statement. So then they're not taking you on. It's the organization's principles. Laugh with them when you can. They used to say, share a laugh, you share a sale. Smile on the telephone. People can hear smiles. Personalize your workspace, but not of pictures of people you love and care about, because you can drag a negative emotion into those images. And so you want to have pictures of cartoons or landscape or a beach or somewhere you like to go to idle down. But sometimes you want to make sure you protect your family from that negative emotion. Smile at everybody. What do difficult people think? Who cares? Smile at them anyway. What do normal people do? Smile back. So it really does lighten the load. Say, I look forward to talking to you, and then say their name, especially on the phone, and they'll stop and look at the phone. Nobody says that to Bob Johnson. And people pop out of their cubicles. You look forward to talking to him? Sure. You know, changes the tone. In 1 minute, I can change my attitude. In that minute, change my entire day. So I'd like you to do a little checkup, in the morning to manage your own morale, to make sure you're prepared, make sure you have whatever you need to respond to that difficult person so they don't take you by surprise. If I was an actor, I get paid to play a role. Guess what? At work, we get paid to play a role. And human resources is a pretty important role. You've got a seat at the table. You're having a tremendous impact on your organization. And so you want to make sure you're the role model where you practice these strategies and share them with others. And then understand paradigm shift. This person that's so mean and nasty might have been somebody that wanted to get something done and it didn't get done, and people keep reminding them of that. Could have been somebody that wanted to get something done right and it wasn't done properly and they're embarrassed by the rework. It could have been somebody that wanted to get along with you, but they felt left out at different times. And it could have been somebody that wanted to get appreciation, and because we didn't like them, we didn't give it to them. It could have been any one of us. So I want you to be sure that you keep that in mind. And, here's a technique: is if they are, misbehaving, just level with them. Say, I'm disappointed, or I'm frustrated, or I'm, confused or surprised when. Describe their observable behavior and what the cost or the gain would be is if they stop it, or would they change their behavior. And you can also provide an assertive message where you describe their behavior, your interpretation of that behavior. Describe your feelings that you have as an HR manager that a person's breaking or bending the rules like that. Describe the consequences, and then state your intentions, how you're going to follow through as far as disciplining the employee or providing them feedback. So when it comes to an assertive message, just think about that difficult person and how you're going to craft that message and how they're going to respond, and make sure you're ready to modify your message to have the greatest impact. Now, if you ever need any other additional resources, you can contact me through 2 different emails. There's plenty of videos on my YouTube channel under my name, Kit Welchlin. There's over 200 videos there. And then there's about 50 videos on managing stress, where you go to YouTube seminars on stress, which is one of my other websites. Well, that's the material I wanted to share with you this morning when it comes to dealing with difficult people. I hope those are some strategies that you're willing to put into practice, because I have found they really do have a positive impact in how we respond. Chris, do we have some questions that I could answer? I know we have a very limited time, but.
Yeah. Hi, Kit. Thank
Hi.
you. You did provide us with some great information, and I am going to put that into good use. I do have a few questions on talking about the difficult people, and you know, HR will most likely at some point possibly have to write something up, and you addressed that a little, but what is kind of the best practice in putting something in this employee's file or records?
Yeah, you know, when I realized that the person we hired was a better interviewee than an employee, and I'm going to have to be dealing with someone that's very difficult to work alongside and is causing a certain amount of mischief or tension within a work group or a team, I believe that documentation is the goal, and the expectation is we're going to probably end up, you know, having to be in front of a referee on an unemployment claim. And so I believe documentation is most critical. The most important part of that, though, is the date, the time, and to describe the behavior. So it would be something like this. To make sure if you're going to give someone feedback, you'd say, Mark, you came to today's meeting 10 minutes late. And in the meeting, you said you had not had a chance to read the preliminary report we were going to be discussing. And now you're saying you're going to take the afternoon off today to go to a dental appointment. So I'm wondering what's going on. But I would script that language, and I would follow the script, and I would make that information what goes into my personnel file. And then when, you know, you never have to deal with the issue of, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And then always be very careful about what I call allness. You never come to meetings on time, or you're always, you know, saying something sarcastic, because they only have to come up with one time they didn't do that, and it damages your credibility. If you said, you know, you always come to meetings late. They say, I came to this performance appraisal on time. Okay. Other than your performance appraisal today, you tend to come to meetings late. You know, remember the holiday party? I was there about 5 minutes early. I helped you put up that last string of lights. Okay, other than the holiday party, and all of a sudden we're backing away, and they're the person that has the power in the conversation. So document, and then make sure they sign something. And if they won't sign that, have them sign something saying they won't sign that. But you got to make sure that documentation is your friend, and you got to trust your gut. As soon as you realize this was a bad hire, you know, you took a lot of time to hire them, but don't take much time in firing them. You know, you got to make sure that you get in there, you get the documentation, you get them out of there as fast as you can.
Thank you.
That helped.
That was some really good advice there. Just one more quick question.
Sure.
Someone asked about humor in the workplace, and some people tend to find this as a negative sort of thing, but how important is humor in the workplace?
You know, it is one of the stress management techniques that I offered when we talked. You know, we had a presentation a couple of months ago. Yep. You know, smiling and laughing is pretty important. I believe people are responsible for managing their own morale. Sometimes, you know, people have a different sense of humor. You know, the gender stuff, the generational stuff, we have to be very careful with that. And, you know, I have some old joke books that I have stacked up on my nightstand. And I'm kind of surprised they're more like history books, and what used to be funny 30, 40 years ago is not funny at all anymore, and it's offensive. So, you know, sense of humor it can only be judged whether it matches somebody else's sense of humor. So I think some guidelines, just like you would with social media platforms and how we approach that. You know, I think it's nice that people can engage in what I would call natural humor. There's plenty of things that happen by accident that are pretty funny. But we don't want any of the sexual overtones. We don't want the sexual harassment tone. We don't want any of the race, age, sex, ethnicity kind of things that, you know, get carried away. And we need to nip it in the bud right away. And so, yeah, things can happen naturally, and we can laugh and smile. And usually they're minor mistakes, or people might mispronounce things, or, you know, catch themselves. And I think we should all have a healthy self-concept, so that when we make mistakes, we can be the first to laugh. And to be willing to give people a break every once in a while, too, when it was inadvertent, they didn't mean it, and they really didn't mean it. And we should be willing to accept apologies because they've learned a great lesson too by saying something inappropriate. And we also recognize where the boundaries are. So I think prescribing those boundaries helps, but we don't want to make it so restrictive that when people come to work, it's like working at a morgue and there's no personal interaction. We want to make sure that people can still be present and engaged in conversation and be lighthearted, but it doesn't necessarily mean raunchy jokes.
Right. Well, thank you. I think we're done actually, but just one question for you, Kit. Will you make the slide deck available to me, because I've already had people ask if they could revisit your presentation. I know it will be a part of the video, but often our attendees like a PDF of the slide deck as well.
Yeah, you know, I don't know of anything more exhausting and more difficult or frustrating than having to spend every day working around dealing with someone that's a difficult personality. And I'll certainly send you those slides, you know, right after our conversation. So you'll have those in just a few minutes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for helping us today learn how to deal with a difficult person, Kit. And, you know, I will be in contact with you in the future, and I'm sure you might hear from some of these folks from HR as well.
Well, have a great day, and thank you for inviting me. Have a great conference.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.